Hey, welcome back to Aasai Rasai. I'm getting ready to make a string hopper meal and I thought I'll share that with you. Here I'm getting ready the water for my steamer and I put 2 cups of water into the pan. This is some tuna fish. It's the ahi tuna, and what we do to prepare it before we actually cook it is we put some lime juice and some turmeric in it, mix it and keep it for about 10 minutes. And then rinse it out and then it'll be ready to cook. It's going to be a simple menu. I'm trying to recreate a village sort of menu here. It brings memories from when I used to grow up in the village. We're from the south, from Matra, so I'm trying to recreate some of the dishes that we used to have with string hoppers back then. And all these recipes have been uploaded already over the years on this channel, so they're easy to find. I will also have the links at the end of this video. So this is ready to rest for about 10 or 15 minutes, and in the meantime I'm going to get the other curries done. Usually I would make the string hoppers first, but it's a little time consuming for me and I feel like I get a little too tired to make the curries the way I want once I have finished the string hoppers. So today I'm going to do it in the reverse. I'm going to make the curries first and then do the string hoppers. Here I have some goraka that I have been keeping for a while but not really used it. It's dry so it lasts forever. You could also soften this if you have all of it in a bottle of salted water. It keeps forever and over time it softens so it becomes like very pasty. So I'm using just a couple of pieces and that's all you need for one curry. You don't need to add too much. And it gives the sour taste, so I don't have to use tomato and I don't need to use lime juice or any other acid when I have the goraka in there. So this is for the pol mallung, that's the yellow coconut mallung that goes with the string hoppers. And if you notice later on in the video, you will also notice that these are pretty much the same ingredients that we use even for the kirihodi, with the exception of fenugreek seeds. And I forgot to add the curry leaves, so I'm adding it now midway through. I had the curry leaves in the freezer, so it completely slipped my mind. So I'm waiting until the onions are translucent. As you can see, we're not quite there yet. It's pretty white. So it takes about 5 to 7 minutes maybe for the onions on high heat to become translucent within that time. So now it's ready. I'm going to add the coconut now and then keep stirring until much of that moisture from the coconut has evaporated. And then the coconut will be flavored by this gravy. So, and then our mallung will be ready. Keep stirring constantly because the coconut will burn. We're also using high heat for this. You want to evaporate the moisture quickly but not burn the coconut, and it shouldn't be too dry as well. The mallung should be sort of like the pol sambal, although you've added water into it, and now I'm using frozen coconut, so there's extra water as well. All that needs to be evaporated and brought back down to how it would feel, the texture of say freshly grated coconut, let's say that. So not too much moisture and not too dry, it's got to be just right. And make sure that all the lumps are broken up and the coconut is even colored. It should be a pale yellow. The coconut mallung or the pol mallung is never a bright yellow, it's always a pale yellow. This is about 8 to 10 ounces of grated coconut. That's about a cup or 1¼ cups of coconut. And to get this color, I needed about a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric powder, maybe like a 1/4 teaspoon and a pinch more. So it's kind of really hard to be precise with the measurements because usually we just eyeball. When you're an experienced cook, you don't really measure. So I'm just going by a pinch of this, a pinch of that. So 1/4 teaspoon for sure, and then a pinch more. And this is ready. You can see it's not stuck to the pan. There's plenty of moisture still. And as this cools, some of that moisture is also going to evaporate. Time to make the fish. The fish has been sitting in the lime and turmeric mixture now for about 15 minutes. I'm going to give this a quick rinse and then it'll be ready to cook. Alright, so fry the onions in a little oil on medium heat. I'm going to be cooking the fish curry on medium heat only right throughout. So once the onions start to look a little bit brown like this or translucent, you could add the green chilies if you're using and some curry leaves and the fish. I have added all the powdered ingredients into the fish. If you're using whole spices, go ahead and add it into the pan and let it fry for a little bit and then add the fish. But for me, I use a lot of powdered spices. Even my garlic is garlic powder, so I'm not adding it here. I have powdered ginger, so all those things I added into the fish and just give it a quick stir like this. And you don't need to marinate it or anything like that. Just put it into the pan with the onions and let it cook. I'm going to finish cooking this in a little bit of thick coconut milk, but to cook it down until that time, I'm using water. I'm going to put some water into the same bowl because there's spices left over in it. So I'm going to just kind of rinse out the bowl with the water and add it into the fish, into the pan right now. How much water you want to add into the curry would depend on how much gravy you want and if the gravy is going to be thick or thin gravy. So if you add extra water and less coconut milk, that means you would get thinner gravy than if you added more coconut milk and less water. I'm going to add, say, about as much water as I would need to make a dry curry. This is not going to have so much gravy because I have the kiri hodi. As a personal preference, I like my string hopper meal to have the milky taste of the kiri hodi to be the dominant taste because it's really mild. But if you like sort of a bolder, spicier taste, go ahead and increase the quantity of gravy in your fish curry, and that will take the lead on your plate of string hoppers and curries. The fish has been cooking for about 10 minutes now. It hasn't completely cooked through, but it's time to give it a little stir. And when you're stirring, make sure that you kind of move the pieces around gently because otherwise they break up. You want to keep the pieces intact, and that's why also I have cut them into slightly larger chunks so that they don't break up. And this is what I'm talking about. You see the inside of the fish, it's not cooked yet, it's pink. We want to avoid that. It should be completely white. So if you're new to cooking fish, take a good look. This has to be completely white on the inside for the fish to be done. And that should take another 5 minutes or so. This is probably because I used frozen fish, and although my chunks of fish were defrosted to room temperature, there may have been a piece or two that hadn't completely thawed in the middle. So that's probably why it's taking a little longer than usual. But it's not a big deal. You just make sure that it's not pink on the inside. Put the lid back on, cook for another 5 minutes, and you should be okay. It's been about 15 minutes since we started cooking the fish. So you can see the gravy has evaporated a little bit. And the other thing that I wanted to mention earlier that I forgot is, oh, look at that. The fish is cooked through, it's all white, it's all good. What I wanted to mention is when you're cooking fish like this, make sure you have a wider pan so that the fish can be kind of cooked in a layer rather than piled up on each other. And that's the coconut milk. I'm using canned coconut milk. I think I used about 3/4 of a cup for this fish curry, but it, like I said before, it evaporates and you will have a very thick coating of a gravy rather than gravy like this, like a runny gravy. You can thin it down at any time, even after it's done. But if you plan ahead, your curry will come out much nicer. And now this is a fish curry, a picture of it I thought I'll share. Once the curry has settled, you can see the oils floating to the top. Time to make the kiri hodi, and this is the last curry before I start making the string hoppers. I've got all my kiri hodi ingredients in my pan. I'm not using lime, I'm not using tomatoes, but those are optional. I'm using the goraka instead. And that will give me enough acid for my kiri hodi. The other thing that I'm not using are the fenugreek seeds, but that's okay. You can skip it if you don't have fenugreek seeds. You can still make an excellent kiri hodi without it. But of course, if you have it, it goes a long way as well. So cook the ingredients in water, bring it to a boil and let it boil for about 5 minutes or until the onions are translucent, just like what we did for the mallung, the pol mallung. And once you have reached that stage, you'll know that it's time to add the coconut milk and just warm it up through. I'll explain that when we get to that point. But stir it a couple of times during cooking. Also note that when you are using kiri hodi for string hoppers, you might have to make a little extra gravy because string hoppers tend to absorb a lot of gravy. Otherwise, while you're eating it, the string hoppers will tend to feel like it gets stuck in the middle of your chest, and then you need to drink water to wash it down. So always have more gravy. It's much better than washing it down with water. So time to add the thick coconut milk. And once that's done, turn off the heat and keep stirring for an extra 2 minutes so that the coconut milk doesn't clot and you'll have a nice smooth gravy. Now I've boiled some water in a pan. This is the water that I'm going to use for the string hoppers. this is the two kinds of flour, the rice flour and the millet flour, or in the Indian store they sell it as ragi flour. So it's the red millet flour or the kurakang flour. I boiled the water and now the bubbles have settled. So this is the temperature you want to achieve for your string hoppers. Otherwise, the string hoppers are going to be dry and hard. It all depends on the water temperatures. Make sure that it's come to a full rolling boil, and then you turn off the heat and let the bubbles settle before using it. And always try to use it almost immediately after you turn off the heat, because you don't want the water to cool down. You don't need to use a stand mixer to make the dough. In the village, or in the traditional kitchen, let me say, in the traditional Sri Lankan kitchen, they would use the end of the spoon, a wooden spoon, to mix the dough by hand, and it was fantastic. But I have never tried it that way, and I don't want to try it because it can be labor intensive and you won't get the feel of the dough if you're not experienced in making it that way. So this is my way of doing it. If you have a stand mixer, go ahead and use the dough hook for it. Otherwise, you could try using, with the end of your spoon, a wooden spoon. At this stage, you cannot really handle this by hand. You cannot mix the dough by hand because of the boiling water. But if you can use some kind of tool or a machine to mix the dough and get the flour going, once it has cooled a little bit, you could certainly use your fingers to mix in the dough a little longer and make it a little more pliable. It may look a little easy to make string hoppers, but if you get the water quantity wrong, that's going to throw everything off track. Your string hoppers are going to be either they're not going to steam very well, and then you're going to get frustrated and you don't want to try making string hoppers ever again because of the effort that you put in and you had to throw everything away. So pay attention to the tips, like the water temperature and the water quantity when you're making string hoppers. And I also want to mention that I have used store-bought rice flour and store-bought millet flour, or the ragi flour, which is the red flour. And I have not roasted the flour. Usually for string hoppers, they say that you have to roast the flour a little bit, and that used to be the case, but not anymore. The store-bought rice flour, the regular flour, I'm not even talking about the string hopper mix, okay? This is the regular rice flour, the packeted ones from the Indian store that I get. Just mix it in with the boiling water and make sure that it mixes very well. It should come together, and if it doesn't, then stop the mixer, mix it up with a spoon, and then you'll be all right. And this is all that's left from 1 cup of water. There's about 2 tablespoons remaining, and that's for 5.4 ounces of white rice flour and 2 ounces of the red flour. So I mixed the 2 flours together with salt, added the water, and this is the consistency of the dough that you should get. Let me show you. I'm going to show you by hand. It looks a little sticky at this point, but once the dough cools slightly, it's going to be fine. The dough is not that hot, it's actually warm to the touch. So I am kneading it with my fingers because the machine didn't do it. My stand mixer couldn't do it really well. That's probably, like I said, because of the flour. So mix it really well for about 5 minutes and not too long. And also note that sometimes it may seem like the dough is the right consistency, but it may not turn out that well when the string hoppers have steamed. And this is a very common mistake that we make when we are learning to make string hoppers. Don't feel bad and beat yourself up over it. So it's coming together nicely. You can see it's a little bit sticky, but that's because my hands are sticky as well from all the mixing. I washed my hands with regular tap water. I've dried them really well, so they're not sticky. Now see, when I touch the dough, I'm able to make a ball, and it doesn't stick on my fingers. It's pretty clean. So your dough may be soft, but if you can still make it into a ball like this, to sort of a non-sticky or minimally sticky dough, then you have the right consistency. Let's make some string hoppers now. I'm using regular string hopper trays, and these are the plastic ones. I have not applied any oil or anything like that. It's not necessary. The string hopper trays are designed to be used this way. You could notice the groove that goes around it that allows it to stack up, but I know that some people also use it on the flip side, so whatever works for you is fine. Now go around the tray like this while squeezing it, and don't load it up too much. It should be kind of thick enough, but maybe, yeah, 2 times is usually what we do. Don't go around it too thickly, because when you steam it, it's just going to be a very heavy string hopper. And you won't get the nice lightweight ones. I'm using only a few string hopper trays because I'm making such a small batch. So once these steam, I'm going to take them off the trays and then reuse the trays. Otherwise, if you have your extra trays that you want to use, you could just finish up a batch, put it in the steamer, and then while it's steaming, take out the other trays and start doing this, placing the string hopper dough like this on the tray and have it ready, so that you could, switch once the other batch comes off. You quickly replace this, and you can get done faster. But I have a little more time and patience today, so I'm going to do it this way. It makes for easy cleanup as well. When you start squeezing out the dough onto the tray, turn on the heat. I'm steaming this on high heat, so you have the pan ready and the steamer going on high heat by the time you have finished squeezing out a batch of string hoppers. So cover it and let it steam for 2 minutes, no more than 2.5 minutes a batch. It's been 2 minutes and it's time to take out the string hoppers. Be very careful when you open the pan and when you put your hand into the pan, because steam burns. If the string hoppers come off the tray without sticking, that means they are ready. So you could also check if when you press on the string hopper like this and it kind of is a little bouncy, that also tells you that they're done. So if they come off clean like this, you know that your string hoppers are 100% steamed very well. If they are sticky, put them back in, cover the pan and steam for a further few seconds. But 2 minutes should do it. Maximum 2 minutes and 20 seconds would be as far as I would go. And finally, the meal is ready. It's taken me about 1.5 hours to get everything done. The curries didn't take long at all. It's the string hoppers that really took a little extra time for me. And that was the pol malung. Here's the fish curry. Like I said, there's hardly any gravy, but it's not dry. There is some sauciness to it. At any time, if you want to make more gravy in the fish, go ahead and add a little water to thin the thickness down, or add some coconut milk, which also makes for a really rich gravy. And this is the kirihodi, which binds everything together. And then we have the string hoppers. The quantities in this meal would serve about 2 to 3 adults, and you will have some curries left over as well. Pol sambal has always been the #1 choice with string hoppers, but pol malung is what's traditionally paired up with string hoppers. So I hope you will give this menu a try. The kirihodi, the pol malung, and the fresh tuna curry. It's really delicious. It reminds me of a southern Sri Lankan meal, especially ones we have for breakfast. And the links to these recipes are at the end of this video. Be sure to check them out. Stay subscribed. I'll be back with another video soon. Until then, enjoy.